Welcome back to Stephen A. Smith Show. My guest today is a Hall of Fame boxer who won an Olympic gold medal and held multiple world championships in 2 weight classes before retiring with an undefeated record of 32-0 with 16 KOs, by the way. He's now an author, and his new memoir, Killing the Image, A Champion's Journey of Faith, Fighting, and Forgiveness, is in stores right now. Please welcome my brother, my friend, the one and only, son of God himself, Mr. Andre Ward. What's up, big time? How are you, man? How's everything?
Stephen A., I'm happy to be on with you, man. And I'm looking at your beautiful studio, man. That looks like a beautiful, beautiful place to do some business. And I'm happy to be talking about the book.
Man, please, anything for you, man. Thank you. And you know you're always welcome in here. You know that. We go back too long of a ways. Talk to me about this book, Killing the Image. Why that title? Why this book?
Well, Killing the Image is, it's who I am is real, but it's not who I've always been. And pulling back the layers, you just wrote your book and you came out with it and you talked in detail about the process. And it was just time, and I was talking to my pastor and he put it to me the best way I can. I said, man, I'm trying to talk to these young guys, man, and they don't understand what I've been through. He said, well, Dre, you got to tell them. And by doing that, you got to kill this image that you've never been through nothing and that you haven't struggled. And that's essentially what this is about. It's pulling back the layers and giving people an in-depth look of how I got to where I got to and how I've been sustained at that high level for as long as I have.
When you wrote this book, did you find yourself a bit reticent, or dare I say regretful, over the fact that you never talked nor told as much while you were fighting?
No, I mean, it's a couple ways to look at that. Me personally, I'm an 80s baby, and I didn't have my mother's blessing to talk about that. You spoke about that.
That's right.
I'm not right until my mother passes. I can relate to that. My mother had a tough background, and I just didn't have the liberty to go tell her story just to sell a fight or to try to get more followers on social media. My father had passed in 2002. That was a long process where I had to come to grips with, okay, I can tell my father's story, but I got to tell it the right way. So it's a lot of moving pieces. The one thing that I knew, Stephen A. Smith, is that my story would be told one day. It just had to be told the right way. The documentary just came out. The book, Killing the Image, is out right now.
Mm-hmm. Now put it up. Put it back up. Put it back up so everybody can see it. There you go. Go ahead. There you go.
You know how hard it is to write something like that. Not just the physical taxing element of it, but the emotional part of it. And we did that. I couldn't just give that to the media to let them run with it and do what they wanted to do.
I'm struggling to decipher, or dare I say imagine, that you, Andre Ward, who always has been class personified, undefeated, world champion, one of the most skilled boxers we've ever seen in the history of the sport. It's one thing for Joe Public out there, because you didn't have much to say and you were sort of a quiet assassin going about the business of doing your thing. The public at large maybe not hearing you or not listening to you. I cannot imagine a fighter not listening to Andre Ward. You're saying that when you spoke to them, some of these cats were looking at you and they were like, what have you been through? Because as your pastor told you, you didn't tell them what you had been through, but they knew you were a champion. They knew you were elite at what you did. They knew that you were class personified along the way, etc. Why wasn't they listening? Why were they not listening to you, in your estimation?
I believe it's what I said. When I came on the scene in 2004, man, I was fresh out the streets and just giving my life to God, and I was trying to figure it out. There was nothing in me that had this media PR plan to try to get the people to fall in love with me or to buy into my story by telling them everything. I was just trying to heal and get myself together. I looked up at a certain point, like I said, and I realized that, man, I haven't told some of these guys what I've been through. I haven't broke this down to them so they would listen and be respectful, especially about the boxing piece, but the life piece, the struggling with alcohol, the nightlife, drugs getting tossed in their face, alcohol getting tossed in their face, dealing with the women and the different things that come their way. They just didn't believe that I had walked that path, because when all they've known is Andre S.O.G. Ward. They didn't know young Dre. They didn't know Dre selling drugs. They didn't know Dre using drugs. They never saw that person. So I understand what I just couldn't fathom, that person existed.
So when you showed it, writing this book and obviously doing the documentary and talking about the kind of things you've talked about, what kind of reception have you received specifically from the boxing community?
Man, just the world at large. I mean, I got people all over the world, including the boxing community. Just the biggest thing I can say is they can relate to it. And I think sometimes a person like me who had the credentials that I had, and sometimes people tell me I'm hard to read. And I say, well, it's just kind of my upbringing and my nature. And I made a good living, being that way. That can rub people sometimes because they can't read you. And then they say that you're not relatable. The biggest thing that has come from this is people say, man, I can relate to you in a different kind of way. I too struggle with drugs. Man, my mother wasn't there all the time. Man, you know what? I have family issues too in this area. So it's really just people finding something in this book. And that's what I love about it, Stephen A. This book is for a mother who stays at home and takes care of her kids every day, or a professional athlete, and everybody in between. This book is not a boxing book. It's not a sports book. It's a human interest story.
A human interest story coming from an elite fighter, one of the elite fighters this game has ever seen. One would say, okay, that's a real compelling story, and obviously it is. As you reflect on now having written the book and doing the documentary and what have you, where are you in your life right now, mentally and emotionally, because of that cathartic experience of really just getting that stuff out of your system, in terms of expressing it, is what I'm saying?
I think I'm as probably aware of myself as I've ever been. The problem with professional sports is it's a distraction. It can be a good distraction, right? Like, I've had to deal with anxiety over the years. And my faith in God and my process there, allowing him to heal me and for me to release my faith in him, that's been a huge factor in how I've overcome and dealt with something like anxiety. But it's always going to come knocking. With boxing, I can go to a gym 4 or 5 days a week and just disappear from the rest of the world, and that's my outlet. Now I've retired. So now I'm internalizing a lot of those things that I was able to get out in that boxing gym. And by going through this process, digging deeper in my faith and learning, having the time to learn about myself, I've learned better ways to deal with things like anxiety, worry, or just the issues of life, man. So I've become more aware of myself now that my life has slowed down a bit. I'm healthier that way. I'm a better mentor, a better father, a better son. And I'm just going to continue on my journey.
When I wrote my book, Straight Shooter, it took me about 5 months. It would have taken considerably sooner. You and I talked about this. It would have taken me considerably sooner if I didn't pause for weeks. Because when I was writing about my mom and what she endured, when I was writing about my dad and what he put us through, it made me pause, because as I'm writing, I'm realizing instinctually, all of a sudden, I remembered things that I had buried for such a long, long time. And ultimately, I'm able to look at it and reflect on some of the moments that I've had in my life and say, this is what I was going through. This is why I might have been a bit acerbic. This is why I might have had an attitude. This is why I might have been a bit standoffish, et cetera, et cetera. That's what I was going through. What about you? When you were writing the book, literally sitting down and putting pen to paper and making sure this was chronicled and documented, what did you discover? What moments did you discover where your experiences in the past affected you that you may not have even known until you were actually writing the book?
And I realized how much I had been through and had overcome. I feel like I've lived 2 or 3 lives already, and I'm 39 years old. I didn't ask to be born into the family that I was born into. I love my family. We got great things about our family, things that I'm proud of, and we got things that I'm not so proud of.
Right.
But seeing how my parents were thrust into the crack epidemic, my father addicted to heroin early on, didn't know what he was getting himself into. My mother started freebasing, and then she got full-blown addicted to crack cocaine, and even was using for a short period of time when she had me in her. I realized, Stephen A., that boxing has been, fighting has been a metaphor in my life. And not just me. Everybody is fighting something. Everybody is going to have to fight and overcome something in life. And sometimes we think fighting is just, a barbaric thing. It's just for combat sports people or people who got that kind of mentality. I don't care who you are. At some point in time, you're going to have to stand your ground and face something. You have to fight through it. You're going to have to push through it. And you have to try to get to the other side. And I just realized how much fighting and working I had to do in my life to get to where I was and to stay there for as long as I had.
Do you find yourself looking at society today in light of what you just explained about having to have the intestinal fortitude, it ain't about getting knocked down, it's about getting the hell back up and continuing to march on and fight on. You know what? Because you could be alive, but that don't mean you're living. You ever find yourself right now thinking about what you just said, that our society has become a bit too soft, that we're not willing to fight the way we once knew we had to in order to survive, let alone prosper? Do you find yourself looking at today's climate and feeling that way?
In some respects, I think in some respects we're unwilling to fight, and then in other respects, we're fighting for the wrong things and for the wrong purpose and the wrong causes. That's my thing. But I personally, hope that this book will inspire some people, and not just inspire Stephen A., but hopefully be a roadmap for people to get up and go do something. It's a lot of hurting people in there. I'll give you an example. Even the forgiveness piece in my book, right? Like you said, what did I discover about myself? I realized, man, how foolish I was at a certain point in time in my life. Some of the things I uttered out of my mouth, I don't care about boxing. No. And I don't care about none of this, man. I just want to live my life. And living my life was being on a corner and trying to do what I saw other people doing, and sell drugs for a block that I didn't own, use drugs to numb anxiety and depression and all these different things. And, getting through that period in my life, Stephen A., it's a situation where I'm hoping somebody can grab that and go take that blueprint and that roadmap and go walk this out in their own life.
Killing the Image, a champion's journey of faith, fighting, and forgiveness. The one and only Andre Ward, the former undisputed light heavyweight champion of the world and super middleweight champion of the world, right here with yours truly. Andre, as you reflect on your boxing career, 32-0, 16 KOs. Last time we saw you was in 2017. You beat Sergey Kovalev by TKO. Any regrets in regards to your career? Do you wish you had fought longer? Do you wish you had fought bigger fights? Is there a particular person you wish you had gotten in the ring with that you were never able to get into the ring with? Anything regrettable along those lines?
No, I don't believe there's no regret. Now, I am a competitor. I got a lot of fights still in me, and that doesn't die or retire when you officially retire. So there's days when I think about the plan that I had in my mind was to go to cruiserweight, 200 and below, and win a title there, and then go to heavyweight and target Anthony Joshua. That was the plan. But I did the right thing. And I'm going to just say this, Stephen, and I think this is, and I hope that people kind of get this by reading this book. I've always been different. I'm not better than nobody. That's not what I'm saying. But my road, the road that God has me on, it's different. It's not going to look like Floyd's road. It's not going to look like Roy's road. It's going to be my road. And it's a road that I haven't really seen anybody else travel. Boxing was a part of my life, Stephen A. It wasn't my whole life. I wasn't supposed to give my all, leave everything in the ring, and be this guy to the masses. And then when I come home in retirement, my family doesn't know who I am. My call is to preach the gospel, man. My call is to be a blessing to people. My call is to raise my family. My call is to make sure that financially I'm doing what I need to do, so I can change the statistics that have been around athletes and fighters for as long as I can remember. This is what I'm truly called to do, is what I'm doing right now in my life. So the boxing was a blessing, man. That's always going to be my baby. That's always going to have a place in my heart. But that was a small piece of what God has put me on this earth to do.
How do you feel about the sport of boxing in today's day and age?
I think boxing is in a great place. There's a lot of big matchups being made. The young crop of guys that's on the way up, boxing is in good hands. I don't like that Showtime is falling out of boxing. I don't like that HBO is out of boxing. We still have ESPN and we still have DAZN. My big concern is these young guys that are coming up, that are going to carry the mantle, is the sport going to be on the proper platform to give us that big boxing feel? I remember watching HBO and hearing the theme music that came on, and how excited I would get as a young, will we still have that feel? The talent is there. The fighters are there. The matchups will be made, but is it going to have the right platform? That's my only concern.
Well, to me, the reason why the reason why those things have been compromised when we're talking about HBO, when we're talking about Showtime, I think if promoters in the sport of boxing hadn't hijacked the sport, I don't think those networks go away. I think those networks stay in play because they would have been in a position to compel folks to have those fights that we all wanted to see, and they wouldn't be at the mercy of promoters, and they still would have been around covering boxing. That's my personal interpretation of it. What's yours?
I mean, it's high time for boxing to be reformed, but nobody wants to talk about it. I've been talking about this stuff with the sanctioning bodies, the belts that fighters fight for.
Right.
They have to pay a percentage of it. The promoters are good for the sport, and there's some things that the promoters are doing that's not good for the sport. Managers are good for the sport if they're doing the right thing, and then there's some things that's not good for the sport. So I'm not saying get rid of everybody, but there needs to be some type of reform in the sport. But when I talk like this, people kind of roll their eyes because they want to keep things the same. Boxing is the only sport that can draw every other sport to them. Everybody, a basketball
Right.
player, football player, entertainer, a media person, they want to come to a big fight.
Yes, sir.
But we're the redheaded stepchild in the sports industry. Like, we'll go see y'all for a weekend, but we really don't want them to do with you outside of that because you have no structure and you have no order. It's high time for that.
No question about it. And by the way, just as an aside, HBO may be gone, Showtime may be gone when it comes to sport of boxing, but the Stephen A. Smith Show gonna be here. We gonna always talk about some boxing on this damn show. You can bet the house on that. I ain't going away. There's no way I'm going away with that. Having said all of that, the big fights, you talked about that. We just saw one a few months ago that we thought was going to be a big one. Errol Spence Jr. versus Terence Crawford. I couldn't believe the slaughter I witnessed. So much has been blamed on the fact that Errol Spence Jr. really shouldn't be fighting at 147. Maybe that's true. Maybe he was a bit weaker. I don't know. But Terence Crawford looked so much stronger, so much more skilled. It really threw me for a loop. Make a fight. What happened in that fight, Dre, between Crawford and Errol Spence Jr.?
Man, I think you just saw the cream rise. And, Errol is everything that people said that he was. I think that, you have to factor in the lifestyle that he's been living the last few years and the car accidents. That's a devastating situation. And I think he was in another car accident that he walked away from. And that stuff affects you. Now, am I going to use that as an excuse or a reason for the way he looked? Absolutely not. Part of that was that, and then more of it was Terence Crawford. Terence Crawford is a bad man, and he's been a bad man for a long time. And this is the problem sometimes when people misread you. Well, Terence hasn't fought nobody. And I'm looking and saying, man, I've been around this sport a long time, and I'm seeing tangibles, but I'm seeing intangibles. I'm seeing stuff in this dude, and I'm hearing stuff, come out of his mouth when he speaks, and I'm seeing a tenacity. Like, he's the truth. And he's not the kind of guy that's going to shy away in a big moment. He's going to rise. So that's what you saw on display. You saw a fighter that can box. You saw a fighter that was poised. But then you saw that finishing ability when it was time to finish. Errol Spence. I love both guys, man. I'm an elder statesman in the game. I love both guys. But somebody got to win and somebody got to lose. And when it's some wood chopping like that, we're going to chop the wood and see where the chips fall, and they failed Terence Crawford.
And I'm telling you this right now, Dre, I'm saying, me, listen, I don't know boxing like you. You know what I'm saying? I always joke to it with everybody, one of the stupidest moments in my career was when I'm sitting there debating with you, the Charlo, and the Charlo twins, and I was like this, wait a minute. Champion me. Let me shut up and let me just listen right now when we talk about Canelo and Triple G. But I say all of that to say I don't think Errol Spence should get back in the ring with Terence Crawford. That's just kryptonite for him. I think that's something he needs to stay away from. You feel that way?
Yeah, I wouldn't like to see it. I don't, from a competitive standpoint, I know Errol's going to want to get that back, but he don't need to go back and do that again.
Right. Canelo just fought Charlo, the smaller Charlo, Jamel Charlo. I was upset about that. Obviously, the bigger Charlo wasn't ready to go, personal reasons and stuff like that. He's a natural super middleweight. He wasn't ready to roll at 168. But for me, for Charlo to move up 2 weight classes against a monster like Canelo, I mean, to me, he was lucky to survive, and people were getting on him because he was on his bicycle. I'm like, damn, he hit the brother, and the minute he saw he couldn't hurt him. You understand what I'm saying? And knowing what Canelo could do to you, I thought it was a wise decision on his part to get on his bicycle or whatever, and now stay the hell away from that weight class for the rest of your career. Do you find yourself agreeing with that assessment?
I respect that. I mean, people got a problem with the way Mel fought, but they don't realize like how dangerous that was for Mel to jump 2 weight classes and then jump 2 weight classes against that guy.
That's right.
Canelo Alvarez throws power in every punch. That's what he does. You could have got embarrassed that night. You could have got knocked out. You could have been a meme. You could have took a risk like that, and that could have ruined your career.
Right.
It did. So it wasn't just a money grab. I believe that Mel went in there and wanted to win, but you get in there sometimes and you see that heat is a lot, and you don't want to take that risk. So I understand what he's going through. For as far as Maul, man, I'm happy to see Maul back. He's been going through a rough 2.5 years, and he's back in the ring, man. And I appreciate that brother for pushing through his personal issues and problems and trying to fight his way back.
So do I.
Him getting a win the other night, I know it was a guy that was a little bit smaller, but man, 2.5 year layoff to look like that, man, I salute him.
Mel Charlo versus Terence Crawford. That's a fight I want to see. Break that down for me. What would you see if we saw that fight?
Yeah, I'll take that. I'll take that. I'm not going against Terence Crawford with anybody.
Neither am I.
I don't care who it is. I don't care who it is. But Mel is strong, and he's always gonna be dangerous. He's a strong country boy. He's gonna be strong, and Terence would have to, be careful of that power. But you got to have more than that power, man. You got to have IQ. You got to have tenacity. You got to have a willingness to know when to jump in the fire and when to avoid the fire. All of those things, you got to figure that out under pressure, under the lights, in the biggest moment. And right now, ain't nobody beating Terence Crawford.
I always wanted, when I saw Canelo Alvarez at the light heavyweight division, I was mad because I said, damn, I wish Dre was still around for that fight. You find yourself wishing you were still around, still boxing, and having an opportunity to go at Canelo Alvarez?
Nah, I don't think he would have fought me.
Why not?
My name was never mentioned with Canelo Alvarez until he fought a common opponent. And he fought Sergey Kovalev. Kovalev was, I don't want to say he was shot, but he was on his way out the door. And he wasn't the crusher at that point in time. And that's a strategic move, and that's what Canelo does. And people get mad when you say that. He's earned the right, and he's in a position with the fanfare that he has and having a country behind him to pick and choose who he wants to fight. That's cool. You can do that. The only problem I have is when we start mentioning his name with the all-time great Mexican fighters or all-time great fighters all time. I have a problem with that because I'm looking at the resume, and a lot of times people point out the names, right? Like he beat this guy. No. When did he beat him? Oh, he was past his prime. Right. Oh, he was 38. Oh, he was 36. People don't know to look for those kind of things, so they see a name and they just say it's a name. But I respect Canelo for what he's done, and I respect him for what he's doing. But I don't believe if I was still active at that time he fought Kovalev that he would have fought me, because my name had never been mentioned in the same breath with Canelo Alvarez. And if I was active, I think it would have remained that way. Have you ever thought, just the last couple of questions, have you ever thought about coming out of retirement, particularly for a fight of that magnitude? Yeah, of course. I'm hardwired to compete. The problem with retirement and the reason why guys go to other vices or maybe, depression sets in and they start losing their identity is because they don't redirect that drive. I've always been a man with a mission. That's like you doing all the shows you do, all the work you do, all of a sudden sitting on the couch. It ain't gonna be good. Right. You got to direct that to something else. So I've tried to do that over the last 6 years. Every now and again, my mind starts, that hardwiring gets activated. Man, if I could do this, I probably need just about this much time to get ready. Man, if I do one tune-up fight, of course, absolutely. It's like I've had to retire multiple times. It's not just one time. I've had to talk myself off the ledge multiple times, and it's not easy. Retirement is one of the hardest things I've ever done. Well, you know what people listening to this is gonna think, right? If somehow, some way, one of them brothers called you out and said they want to fight at Andre Ward, you're undefeated champion, you retired years ago. It's been about 6 damn years since you've been going on 7. They want a piece of Andre Ward. What's Andre Ward gonna say, bro? I mean, I'm just asking Andre Ward. I mean, what's Andre Ward gonna say? I'm gonna say this. It's been 6 years, ain't nobody called my name yet. Stephen A., it's a reason for that. They don't want you. They don't want it. Nobody's called my name. So now, instead of fighting, I'm producing documentaries and I'm writing books. That's right. You know what I'm saying? I haven't had one person call my name in the last 6 years.
Well, let me say this before I let you go. Boxing analysts never give that up because you did an exceptional job. I was honored to work with you the couple of times that I had the pleasure of working with you on ESPN doing what you do. You understand? So I miss you. I know how brilliant you are, you know, with this pugilistic sport. You are something special. Don't give that up, bro. Don't give that up.
Appreciate you. Appreciate you.
All right. Killing the Image, a champion's journey of faith, fighting, and forgiveness. It's in stores now. The one and only Andre Ward. Appreciate you, my brother. Love you, man. Good to see you.
I love you too. Thank you.
All right, bro.